Hi everyone, it's Harry, and this is going to be like somewhat of an update video to a couple of videos of like this particular topic that I've done a few times in the past now. But so a brief little story. Earlier this week on Tuesday, I did go and see Mattel's new cinematic outing, which is the new Masters of the Universe. And kind of like with the Barbie movie that came out a few years ago. This new take on He-Man um, did leave me feeling very impressed, even though I didn't grow up with the whole brand as a child. And now He-Man or Master of the Universe has actually given me a bit of hope on how Mattel can go about with some of their other properties that are not like you know, not like specific toy based properties, including this guy right here. And now, this is some information that was hiding in plain sight for almost 2 weeks now. Like I'll put like the original link to the source in the description below. But so pretty much this is basically going to be like a little update video because not many people have really come out regarding this new information. But the live action Thomas movie that Mattel has got in the works is not cancelled. In fact, it's officially, moving forward, and apparently, according to one of the guys over at Mattel Films, the project is halfway through its production, meaning that they're almost about to complete slash finalize the script slash the draft of the story, let alone the concept art of what all the characters are going to look like and stuff. However, you might be wondering, why aren't you referring to this movie as the Mark Foster Thomas movie? Well, I don't know about you guys now. This wasn't actually addressed when this article was published by Deadline, because there could be a slight chance that Mark Forster and a few other writers that are originally attached to the project when Mattel first announced the movie back in 2020 might not be attached to it anymore. Like because I know just Barbie and Master of the Universe and the movie went through a whole bunch of development hell from studio rights as well as directors, storylines and other things. So personally, I wouldn't be surprised if the same thing happened with this upcoming Thomas movie. How if say Mark Foster and a few others have left the project to work on other things, it could have been a slight chance that the movie might have gone through a few rewrites. But it's very interesting because I wasn't aware of this until yesterday, where infamous Thomas user Soda Productions actually made a video discussing the little podcast that was mostly directing how it took so long for this He-Man movie to get off the ground and stuff like that too. But Robbie Brenner, who's the head of Mattel Films, and a few other people who worked alongside the movie, has confirmed that okay, yes, we can kind of technically count that this upcoming Matchbox movie with John Cena is technically the next movie from Mattel's cinematic lineup to be released, but Matchbox, from what I know, is going to be a direct to streaming type movie, so Apple TV or something like that. But we're talking actual theatrical movies, and for what we've been for well, sorry, but for what I heard, Thomas is going to be next in line to get the cinematic big screen treatment from Mattel alongside the Viewmaster movie, which Mattel is also confirmed to be in the stages as well. So now I'm not entirely too sure how what we can really expect from the movie going forward, but He-Man, like I said, how it gave me hope because unlike the Barbie movie, Mattel took the Masters of the Universe movie in a very serious direction. By that I mean we didn't see characters like He-Man or Skeletor be portrayed as like, titular action figures. If anything, like, it was a very faithful, love letter towards the original cartoon from the 80s, which was, its main source material from that little film adaptation. So I do believe that after what Mattel gave us with He-Man, there could be a pretty high chance that Thomas and all the other engines and vehicles will be portrayed as, like, actual machines rather than, like, just a bunch of, like, toys with faces and stuff. Because like Thomas, the coaches and the other engines have, like, faces, does not give Mattel, the direct right to treat them as anything less than toys, because Wilbur Audrey never envisioned Thomas to be a toy, but always to be a real life steam engine. So I can bet you this book too that if Mattel were to treat, like, all the vehicles as toys, the fandom would absolutely riot. Like, I can guarantee, like, if that were to be the case, but I don't believe it's going to be the case or not. So, now, if anything, I want to say maybe sometime next month or like in August, Mattel might probably, like, give us like an official update in the movie from, say, a brief cast announcement. Like, say they might get Ewan McGregor to voice the likes of Thomas and Jack Black to play the Fat Controller, for example. Along with a potential 2028 release date. Like, that's what I'm seeing. Like, speculations regarding, like, the status of the projects. But I could be wrong. It could be later, or it could be, like, very closer than expected. But we don't know, because the actual source of this information is almost 2 weeks old. So just before when Master of the Universe came out. So yeah, and another thing too, I want the Thomas movie to be, like, mainly focus, just like how Barbie and Master of the Universe or He-Man, like, the focus of those movies were primarily, like, its title characters. I want the same thing happen to Thomas. Like, I want this new movie to be mostly about Thomas and as well Liana Sodor, more than, say, just, like, have an autistic person, being the main lead and Thomas being a secondary character. Because that's kind of where, like, Magic Railroad and even the cancelled Adventures of Thomas movie missed the mark when it came to, like, bringing, like, this particular IP to the big screen. But at the end of the day, yes, I have, like, despite my, like, low expectations regarding the upcoming reboot, which is set to release at the end of the year, I'm not entirely too sure if the reception of the reboot will have, like, any impact on the upcoming movie. In fact, we don't even know if the reboot has, like, any influence on some, like, this changes to the movie, but only time will tell, I guess. But not to mention, we've also got the Magic Railroad Director's Cut coming out very soon as well. So, yeah, there's 2 things to look forward to. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this little brief little update video. Like, feel free to let me know, like, your thoughts on this exciting update. And I'll see you guys in a future video. Bye.